Good evening. Thank you so much for everyone that's going to be joining in. I'm just going to do some admin here and invite my winemaker for the evening. So tonight I am going to be speaking with German Bruzzone. He's one of my favorite winemakers in Uruguay, and he's working with a really exciting project, Bodega Garzón, which is really putting this incredible wine region, Maldonado, on the map. So we're going to be talking with him about Granite and about this cool coastal terroir in Uruguay. And this is the first of a series of talks which I'm going to be doing regularly in the run to the launch of the South America Wine Guide, which is coming out early next year. So please make sure to join us for some of these other talks because we're going to be joined by some of the best winemakers in South America and hopefully learning a lot about what makes these wines quite unique. I first went to Uruguay about 10 years ago, 11 in fact, ages me a bit more than I want to, and ended up going for Christmas and New Year, my first year in South America, and going back every Christmas and New Year because it's such an incredible country to discover. Hold on, let me just invite him again, with really wonderful people and these beautiful coastline of beaches. And I've always had a real soft spot for Uruguay, and especially for its wines. Hello, Herman!
Hello, how you doing?
Very well, how are you?
Fine. It's excellent. Actually excellent. Today it's a beautiful day in Uruguay, so we are really happy with the weather.
With the sunshine.
It's quite dry, but we are really happy with the sunshine and everything. It's like everything is beautiful today.
Good. I was just saying how much I love Uruguay and how much my first trip was probably around this time of year. Just a week before Christmas I arrived for my first ever Christmas and New Year in South America and had an absolute blast, and have returned many times since. So we're going to really look at the terroir of Maldonado, where you're based, and talk about the work that you're doing with Garzon. But I'd really like to start this talk a bit about you and where you started, because you're a Canelones boy originally, aren't you?
Yeah, yes I am. Yes I am from Canelones, Chico. Sorry?
Tell me about how you got
you?
into wine. Are you from a wine family? What was your introduction?
Yes, I came from a winemaking family. It's my grandfather came from Europe, and he started growing vines in Canelones, actually in Canelón Chico. It's a little region inside Canelones. It's close to Montevideo. But it's a totally different terroir than here in Maldonado. I need to learn a lot of things about Maldonado, how to produce vines here, because it's totally different. The soil, the weather, the influence from here we have the influence from the ocean. In Canelones we have the influence from the river, the river plate, La Plata, Rio de la Plata.
Super.
It's close. Yeah, that separates Uruguay from Buenos Aires, basically. So it's totally different terroir. So I need to learn a lot of things to understand Maldonado and to understand how to produce wines in this new region.
I imagine.
It's
incredible because Uruguay is quite a small country relatively. It's one of the smallest in South America, but you have quite a diversity. So you've got 99 soil types within the...
Yes.
And then we're really looking at this kind of coastal influence. On the one side, as you said, towards Buenos Aires, it's this river influence, which is where the traditional wine regions are. And then you moved east, and you've been with Garzon since the beginning of the project in 2008, roughly?
Yeah, but I came to Garzon in 2009, actually, because, well, Eduardo Felix, the vineyard manager, he started the project in 2008, but I arrived in 2009.
Perfect.
Yeah, but it's from the beginning, actually.
Before any wines were made, for sure.
Yes.
So the big difference that we see in just 170 kilometers, as you said, is that we move from this warmer river influence to slightly cooler coastal influence. So can you give us a description of Maldonado in terms of climate, and kind of position us, because it's totally different to anywhere else in South America. So we have to completely
Yes.
forget Argentina and Chile in this equation, and tell us
Yeah,
about Uruguay and how it compares in climate to other wine regions.
actually from Mendoza, it's the opposite, totally the opposite, because we are just 14 miles from the ocean, so it's an ocean influence region with dry soils, really poor soils. We have our granito. We call it balasto. It's a decomposed granite. It's an ancient granite, but it's really poor, really dry. That's really interesting because in Uruguay it rains a lot. Rains around 14,000 millimeters per year, even 16,000. So it's a lot for a wine region. But with our ocean influence that helps to dry the clusters, dry the vines, and with the soil that it's really poor, and the water percolate in the soil a lot, because it's basically sand and granite. So you have no clay. It's really interesting to produce wines, and of course grapes takes the minerals from the soil. That's really interesting, and you can find that minerality in the wines. And of course the ocean helps with the wind. It's a cool and healthy wind, and it brings salinity to the wines, to the vines, and then to the wine. So it's really, it's a new terroir. It's a 21st century terroir from South America, and of course from Uruguay, and we are really happy to be the first in this, to develop this terroir.
Absolutely.
So
I think the really interesting thing about Maldonado is how it's really kind of grown and exploded in such a short time.
mm-hmm.
So to put it into context, there was historically plantings by Francisco Pirella in the 1890s,
Mm-hmm.
that got abandoned quite quickly because it was such a tough terroir to work with. And being such a dry and difficult place to grow grapes. And then, of course, your neighbors nearby, Alto de la Ballena, started in 2001, and then Garzon came along in 2008 and really put this region on the map. So just for those who are watching and haven't been to Uruguay before, I think there's just over 420 hectares in Maldonado today. Is that about right?
Mm-hmm.
And over half
yes.
of that is your vineyards.
Yes. Now we have 250 hectares in Garzon, the Garzon region, and it's really interesting because Garzon, it's like a small terroir in the new terroir of Maldonado. You mentioned other wineries as Alto La Ballena, for example, that it's really beautiful, but they are in another region of Maldonado. It's the same area, but in a small area you have different regions and different little terroirs, small terroirs.
And why do you get such diversity within such a small area?
Yeah, it's maybe because it's we have a lot of soft hills in this area. It's a hills area. I don't know how to say exactly in English, but you understand.
Yeah,
so
in Spanish.
Colinas, yeah. But and you have little valleys, valles, in with different influences from the ocean and from the sun and the soil in this little region is different from other. For example, in our vineyard, we have 250 hectares of vines, but the whole property has 5,000 hectares. So you in those 5,000 hectares, you really find different small regions with different kind of soils, different influences, as I mentioned, from the ocean. We are really in front of the ocean. We have nothing between the ocean and our vineyards, and that's really incredible because we receive the breezes of the ocean really frontalmente, how you say?
Directly.
Direct, yeah, from the ocean. So everything, well, the vines are alive, and they change in depending on how soil you have and how it influences you brings to your small terroir. So it's a small area, but you obtain different kind of grapes in different small regions.
Excellent. I've tried to put it, I thought I'd managed to save these photos to my reels, but I have had a technology fail. But you can slightly see in the background the
Yeah.
Vineyard of Garzon, which to me it's incredible. You've absolutely broken up this 250 hectare area, which, just to make everyone know, it's not actually just one vineyard. It's completely surrounded by forests and hills and lakes. And you've split it into so many different plots. So tell me a bit about that process, because you started, how many soil pits were dug before you even planted a vine?
Well, we really need to work hard to understand the place. Actually, we have more than 1,200 small parcels. You can see in the picture. So we have small parcels, and those small parcels are like a different one to the other because the things I mentioned, the exposure to the soil, to the sun, sorry, basically because you have the same grape planted with different exposures, faces north, south, east, and west, the same grape, and you obtain different kind of flavors and everything. And we have a lot of biodiversity in our vineyards, and that's really important for us because you obtain fruit, grapes, with a really terroir sense. I don't know if you know what I mean. You have the sense of the terroir because of the biodiversity. You have a lot of animals, wild animals.
It's all those other things that you get beyond the fruit profile, isn't it? It's the kind of the herbal, the floral, the stones, the saltiness, all those extra complexity, I think, is what you mean by the kind of terroir elements that really come out in the wine.
Yeah.
You have
a lot of wild animals.
You've got loads of animals in your forests there, don't you?
Yeah.
What are you?
Yeah. No, they are beautiful because they are wild animals. They are surrounding the vines, and it's interesting because if you have wild animals in your vineyards, it's because there are nothing to hunt them or nothing to disturb them. So it's interesting because it means that you have a healthy environment. That's the reason why you have a lot of wild animals living everywhere, like wild boars, capybaras, foxes, rabbits. Well, you have the animals that you imagine, you have there.
And
it's a wild area.
A problem for the vineyard? Do any of them come and steal some of your fruit?
Yeah, sometimes, yes. We are mostly with the wild boars because they love grapes. But well, we have some fences to avoid the
wild boars taking
the massive I don't know how to say.
Yeah.
Que no vengan muchos. You know.
I mean, wild boars are a problem in Italy too. I mean, it's interesting that you know, you've got to keep them out, otherwise they'll eat all the delicious grapes that we want to eat.
Yeah, of course.
So we're gonna taste this first wine, which is the Albariño single vineyard. I have here.
I've been trying it.
I know, me too. I opened it as soon as we did our practice. I
Yes.
was like, oh, I'll have a glass.
Yeah. Well, now it's a perfect temperature.
Mine too. So
No, it's
Albariño, because this is an incredible, for me, it's the real star variety of Maldonado whites for sure.
mm,
And I think it's a rising star in Uruguay. And I think it's really helping open people's eyes to how different Uruguay is from the other wine regions of South America, because we get this incredible saline, refreshing, and totally different style of white wine. So tell me a bit about why Albarino, because I know your viticulturalist Eduardo has been a key part of the Albarino story in Uruguay, helping plant it first
yeah,
with the Bausa family in Canelones, who now also have their vineyard
exactly. Yeah.
Maldonado. Why did Garzon really kind of champion this variety, and why does it work in Garzon?
Yeah, we think that the success of our Albariño is maybe because we have the same or similar conditions than Galicia or Rías Baixas region, where Albariño was first grown. So we have similar conditions. We have similar soils. There are granite soils. It's not, of course, the same exactly granite, but they have granite soils as Garzon. They have some hills in the region in Rías Baixas region. The influence of the ocean, the rainfall. So we have really similar conditions from Galicia or Rías Baixas, and that's the reason why we start to grow Albariño in Garzón. Of course, you mentioned Bausa. Bausa was the first in Uruguay who grows Albariño, but they grow in another region, in Canelones, with different soils, different terroirs. From our point of view, Garzón has the perfect conditions for the Albariño, and that's why we produce this style of Albariño with this granite, the minerality in the mouth, and you have this natural acidity that came from the ocean breezes, because during the summer in Uruguay it's not so hot, but sometimes you can reach 34 Celsius degrees, but in our vineyards we have the breezes, the cool breezes of the ocean. So we have maybe 2 or 3 Celsius degrees minus than other regions in Uruguay, and that helps a lot to preserve those freshness of the Albariño, those of course the flavors of the grape, but also to keep the natural acidity in good levels. And that's, for us, is really important, because a white wine without good acidity maybe is not so good. Maybe you you drink one glass of this wine and then you don't like to continue drinking.
Absolutely.
But
This does have this incredibly vibrant acidity. It's such a lively wine, but it's such a serious wine. I think, we're really looking at incredibly premium example here of Albarino, and one that would really stand up to the very best examples from Rías Baixas. Can you tell me a bit about the winemaking for this? Because we've got so much texture. It's incredibly long. It's got this beautiful layered floral notes with lovely kind of white peach, but this incredible salinity and minerality, as you described. What is it that you do from picking the grapes, and how is your kind of winemaking in a nutshell?
Yeah, the first and most important thing is the grapes. We really choose the perfect place to pick the grapes. Our Albariño is planted in 40 hectares. We have 40 hectares of Albariño, so it's a large area. So we really need to focus on the very special areas to produce our single vineyard. It's a small production. We produce just 10,000 bottles, around 10,000 bottles. So we really need to focus on the quality, the premium quality grapes. That's the first step. Then, of course, we hand pick the grapes. We we take the grapes to the winery with really taking care about not to damage the grapes, to preserve the quality. And then, of course, we select the grapes in our sorting tables, and then with the stem, and it goes to the press. In the press, we macerate with the skins and the juice. We macerate for maybe 5-6 hours, depending on the quality of the year, basically the quality of the grape and the conditions of the year.
Great quality year, would you macerate longer?
Or depending on the quality of the year, basically, on the weather of the year and the grapes. Why we macerate? Because in the skins is where you have a lot of flavors. So you really want to keep those flavors in the wine, but you need to take care about not to over extract.
Yeah.
Because it's a white wine, so you don't like to have over extraction. Then, of course, we use CO2 to avoid the oxygen. We use dry ice to cool everything in the presses. Then we start the press. We take the first juices, the cuvée, like French people said. And this juice goes to our tulips, the tanks where we ferment. We call it tulips because they have the similar shape as a tulip. It's like a glass, this glass without without this. Yeah, you translate.
Yeah, absolutely. Without the stem, they look like incredible. Vases. They look like a tulip-shaped vase.
Yeah, tulip shape, yeah. But there are concrete tulip shaped tanks. And that's really interesting because the concrete helps because it has some poros, and in the poros you have some oxygen, and that little oxygen helps during the fermentation and then during the aging of the wine. And then, of course, we have those in those poros we have some microflora from our vineyards, and that helps a lot to keep the authenticity of our terroir. Then at the end of fermentation, we clean the juice, or now the wine. We clean the wine. We softly clean the wine, not so much because we want to keep the lees in the tank. And we keep it with the lees. We keep the wine with the lees for 8 months, 9 months, depending on the year. And that's why we obtain that kind of tastes and that kind of roundiness in the wine, because we keep the wine with the lees during around 8-9 months before bottling. And that's the process, briefly the process.
Excellent.
Of our single vineyard.
A lot of people talk about using concrete, which is, it's a very important, it's a very historical, I mean, it's one of the most historical kind of containers and vessels that we've used in South America for sure, but it's really part of the kind of modern movement of winemaking in South America, and also, Garzon is a great exponent of that. And unlined concrete. So can you tell us a bit, do you think it's mainly the micro oxygenation that changes the profile of the wine, or do you think it's the material itself that has an impact compared to, for example, stainless steel, which is what you typically use in Raíz Baixas for your Albarino there?
Yeah, it's a mix of a lot of things. I really like the stainless steel. I like the stainless steel, but the stainless steel is like a death material. It's you if you you don't obtain nothing from the stainless steel, but from the concrete you always obtain different flavors and different the fingerprint of Garzon is on those tanks, because in the poros, in the walls, or inside the
Yeah, the
tank,
pores.
you have,
Pores. Mm-hmm.
yeah, and inside the pores you have microflora from our vineyards, and you have the smell of your winery inside the tank. If you open a tank, a concrete tank, you smell wine. Of course, it's clean, totally clean, but you still smell the wine that was before the new wine you want to put inside the tank. So that's for me the most important thing. Of course, the micro oxygenation is really interesting. The temperature control, or because stainless steel is 3 millimeters of stainless steel, but you have 15 centimeters of concrete. So if you have a hot season inside the tank, you have that your temperature is different than outside. I don't know if
Absolutely, much better, much more
you know what I mean.
and easier for temperature consistency.
Exactly. Thank you very much. And yeah, and of course, well, micro-oxygenation it's interesting too, because you know that the oxygen, little quantities of oxygen during the aging of the wine, it's really important for the process of the wine. So it's a mix of a lot of things. If you ask me which is the best for you, which tank is the best for me, it's the concrete, always concrete and wood.
Excellent. Both whites and reds then, for most varieties, you'd say.
Yeah, but yeah, for reds and whites, I really like it. It's we always said with Alberto Antonini, the ones who introduced the concrete in Garzón. He always said we are it's like back to the future, because it's like it's, of course it's something that we use in the past, but it's the thing that we will use in the future. It's the future of the winemaking. Yeah.
I think that's what's so exciting at the moment in South America in general, is this real appreciation of the kind of historical way of doing it, but doing it better. And kind of innovating and using that kind of historical knowledge, and then adding some of your kind of modern techniques too. I'm in love with this Albarino. I could absolutely carry on drinking it, and it's one of my favorite Albarinos. Hands down, I would pick this over Rice Baixas. Sorry to my friends, especially the ones in Galicia watching tonight. But I think, it's got real great varietal typicity, but so much length, so much persistence. And it's a great food wine. Do you have a favorite dish for this? Do you have anything, a nice typical Uruguayan? I mean, you've got a fabulous restaurant in Garzon under the hand.
Yeah, for me,
so I'm sure you eat wonderfully most days.
I really love the octopus, the grilled octopus with this Albariño. It's like heaven. It's incredible. But of course, sushi or some ceviche or some seafood, basically seafood. But it has texture. It has the texture and the acidity. So it's really, you can drink it with a lot of different kind of dishes, seafood, but also with some meat. Why not? Because it has power. So of course, if you ask me which is your favorite dish, it's with octopus, because I love it.
I love it with a nice pork. Oh, we've got one suggestion there: squid ink paella. Sounds fabulous. Oh.
Yeah, with my...
So we're going to move on. We're going to move on to the Tannat. But before we talk about Tannat, I want you to explain a bit, because you've got loads of different varieties there in Garzón. You range from Pinot Gris to Petit Verdot. So tell me what works in this terroir, and is it just because you've got so many different plots that you can find the right place for most things, or do you need a certain kind of style of wine that you can really style grape variety, I should say, that you can produce there?
Sorry, I didn't
I
understand
bumbled
your question.
it.
I'm really
I'm asking about the other varieties that you use in Garzon and what works really
yeah,
nicely. So what other varieties beyond Albariño?
yeah. Well, from my point of view, Albarino is the best always. But talking about white grapes, we also produce a really interesting Sauvignon Blanc, and for me, it's the second white grape in Garzon, Sauvignon Blanc, and now we are learning more and more about different small regions in our vineyards of Sauvignon Blanc, and we are finding special fruits, special grapes, and last year, not last year, in 2019, we first produced the single vineyard Sauvignon Blanc, and that was like eureka. It was incredible. So we are learning more and more about Sauvignon Blanc, and this is my second grape of white grape in Garzon. But also, as you mentioned, we have Pinot Grigio, we have Petit Manseng, we have Viognier, and there are really beautiful grapes.
Reds as well, don't you? So tell us a bit about your favorite red wines that you're producing.
It's not easy to say which grape is one of of my little sons, but I really love Tannat. Now I really love Tannat, of course. Tannat is the grape of Uruguay, but we developed a beautiful Cabernet Francs in Garzon. I really love Petit Verdot, some Pinot Noir. It's like it's not easy to choose one single grape, and depending the moment, because sometimes you want to drink something soft and you choose some Cab Franc or softer Pinot Noir, but then you prefer some stronger and you choose Marcelin, that it's beautiful grape, or even a Tannat, Petit Verdot. So depending on the moment, depending on how I feeling, is the grape I choose.
I mean, I think that's what every parent would say about their children too. They have a different time of day. So quickly about vintages, because there is quite a lot of vintage variation in Uruguay. We're looking at a climate that has quite a lot of rain, as we've discussed, and you have you have a lot of sunshine sometimes, you have a lot of cloud other times. So vintage by vintage, what are the varieties that really work most, kind of regardless of the huge vintage variation that you get? What are the most consistent varieties?
Well, depending, because you have different moments of picking of the grapes. You have early grapes and late grapes. In Uruguay, basically, at the beginning of the summer, at the middle of the summer, beginning of the summer, you have good conditions, good weather, and this is between January, February. And this is for the white grapes. So in mostly of the times, white grapes it's doing well in Garzon. But then when the autumn or fall comes at the middle of March, the weather conditions usually change. So it's not easy to reach the perfect ripeness moment of the grape without any trouble, without any mildew or botrytis. So if you have early grapes, early ripe grapes, as Merlot, Cab Franc, or Pinot Noir, or even Marcelin, you always obtain good grapes, good quality grapes. Then sometimes you have good conditions during all over the harvest, so you obtain perfect quality in all of your grapes. But talking about the weather conditions, it's easier to produce a good Cab Franc. It's easier than produce a good Petit Verdot. But because of the soil, that drainage of the soil, and because of the ocean in Garzon, because of the terroir of Garzon, we obtain good quality in every single different grape. Of course, with small variations between the years, of course, but it's like a good quality every single years. For example, 19 was dry at the beginning, then start to rain, and then dry at the end. So, but 2020 was dry during the whole harvest, and those variations brings different qualities to the wines every single year, and that's what we are learning about Garzon. Which grapes and which areas of our vineyard it's better with which condition. If it's raining, because sometimes you choose this area, but if it is dry, you choose this other area because you know that it's better for the ripeness of the fruit. I hope it was clear with the explanation.
And it's all the more impressive, really, because you've only been experiencing this vineyard for 12 years, so it's incredible. And really only being able to make wine, for 5, really. I mean, when the vines are fully kind of age. So it's incredible that you've learned so much in such a short span of time and kind of achieved such great, incredible recognition for your wines. So well done to everyone on your team, because that learning curve has been steep, and you've done it very well. And you mentioned about the fact that Uruguay really favors the kind of early varieties, because of course the champion grape of Uruguay is this very late variety, which is Tannat, which just seems to be one of the most interesting varieties for me to kind of come out of this kind of rainy maritime climate. Why has Tannat done so well? I mean, I've heard so many different opinions from Uruguayan winemakers. What is your opinion? Why is Tannat Uruguay's champion? Because
one of the reasons is because Tannat really likes the water. It doesn't like really dry seasons. It prefers some rains. It prefers to have always water in the soil, and in Uruguay the water is something that you don't mind about water, because it rains a lot. So it's not like other grapes, like I don't know, maybe Malbec from Argentina, for example, prefers dry areas. Tannat is the opposite. Actually, if you have more than 4 or 5 days without rains during the summer, Tannat starts to need water, start to the hydric stress. So you need water. Actually, we have in 100% of our vineyards, we have irrigation.
Yeah.
It's
fascinating for Uruguay, because
it's crazy.
Most don't need to irrigate, but that's because of your very poor granite soil. Is that right?
Yeah. The water percolates in the soil, and you have maybe after a good rain, in 3 days, you start to have some stress in your vines because they need water. Tannat likes the water. So this is one of the reasons. Other reasons are because it had good production, good color. It's perfect grape for Uruguay, for the climate, for the weather of Uruguay, and remember that Uruguayans we are sons of immigrants, and they start to grow vines maybe around 1870, 1880, and they start to grow Tannat because it has good production, good color. In the past, the color was really important, and they always obtain good quality in the wines, and that's one of the reasons why Tannat, after long years, well,
thrived.
begins. Yeah, no, it's the grape of Uruguay.
Absolutely. I thought when you said Uruguayans are ... I thought you were going to say meat eaters, because also I think one of the reasons that Tannat has done so well in Uruguay is this cultural connection with wanting a big red wine with tannins, which works so perfectly with a steak, or
yeah.
and Uruguay.
Yeah, we always showed. Yeah, we always joke that we are 3 million people in Uruguay, around 3 million people, but we have more than 12 million cows. So we eat a lot of meat.
And I would venture to say, and my Argentinian friends won't like me very much for saying this, but I would say that the steak is better in Uruguay. Anyway, so irrigation is not a problem in Garzon because obviously you've got this incredible water table underneath, with great fresh water supplies. Can you tell us a bit about your Tannat in Garzon, kind of putting it in the spectrum of Uruguayan Tannat? Because what I love about tasting Tannat from Uruguay is that you've got such different expressions in different regions. And I think Maldonado has really come out with its own kind of expression, which has really changed the opinion of Uruguayan Tannat. Can you tell us what you think about the kind of terroir expression of Maldonado Tannat?
Yeah, we work with Alberto, and Alberto's philosophy, it's for us, it's something incredible. He always said for the Tannat and for the red wines, but basically for the Tannat, because of the personality of Tannat, we really need to take care about three different things. First of all, the ripeness moment, not to overripe the grape, but this is for all of the grapes, the red grapes. If you overripe the grape, of course you will obtain a good tannin because it's a ripe tannin, but you obtain jellies flavors. You just standardize flavors in jellies, you know? So you lose your identity, the identity of your terroir, because you standardize the flavors for the jellies and you lose that freshness of the fruit, the natural, the fresh fruits that you can obtain of your terroir. Then in the winery, if you over-extract, that means during the fermentation, you do a lot of pump overs and you work hard with all of the process. You over-extract tannins and then you obtain a really root Tannat. And that's what people doesn't like. People remember Tannat as a strong wine that you need to drink with a big steak and I don't know, rude people. And in Garzon, you can drink a Tannat without any food, and you really enjoy it. And that's one of the secrets of our Tannat, that every single people likes to drink our Tannat, and you don't need a big steak or a big food to pair with our Tannat. And the other thing that we really take care is not to over oak our wines. We really don't like the oak flavors, or maybe the toasty flavors of the oak, because the oak is okay, but toasty flavors is what we don't like, because you enmascarate your own flavors with a beautiful coffee or vanilla or chocolate or whatever, or smoke, but it doesn't came from the terroir. It came from the oak, from your barrel or your food. So we really take care of those three musts in our winemaking and our the way we produce our grapes. Instead, just focusing on express our terroir. the terroir is the most important thing we want to show you. We want that you in London drink our Tannat, and you can travel to Uruguay in few minutes and understand what we are doing in our winery.
Yes.
That's maybe the thing that we want to express.
Amazing. And I'm certainly traveling in my glass, and I love this kind of naked Tannat, that, you know, movement that's happening in Uruguay, kind of really not over oaking and not over extracting, and focusing on the purity of fruit. And I think your single vineyard Tannat here is just such an incredibly seductive, beautiful Tannat with so much elegance and so much energy. And this is one thing that I think Alberto said to me in an interview years ago, and it's stuck in my mind, is that this kind of granite terroir really gives you these very energetic wines. You know, they're very lively,
Yeah.
they're not tiring at all. And one thing that, you know, we're tasting your single vineyard, which is incredible, and it's £32 retail here in the UK. And but Belasto, which is your icon wine, which is about 3 or 4 times. I don't know how much is Belasto at the moment. Do you know?
It depending on the country.
More expensive. It's four times the price, let's say. But what happens often with these icon wines is that they, you know, become overly oaked and quite tiring, and you can't finish the bottle. But I do think your philosophy and Belasto is, they are wines that you can drink, and the focus is on finishing that bottle and enjoying every sip. And obviously that's a lot to do with your winemaking philosophy. But can you tell me what you think the impact of that granite soil is on the composition of the Tannat in the glass?
Yeah, you can feel the minerality, but for me the most important thing is, of course, the minerality. It's really interesting, and you can feel it, and it's mouth. I don't know. It's like mouth.
Coating?
Cuando se te hace agua la boca.
Oh, mouth watering.
Mouth watering. That's the word, mouth watering, because of the granite soil influence and because of the ocean. But for me, the most important thing for the soil, or why the soil it's really important in our wines, or the influence of the soil in our wines, is because they are really dry, and they are really the percolation of the water. In Uruguay, remember, again, rains a lot, so the water it's a problem in Uruguay. It rains really a lot, more than in Bordeaux, more than in a lot of beautiful places to grow vines in the world. So if you have this kind of soil with this percolation, you have one problem. No, un problema menos. You have
one less problem.
one less problem. Thank you. One less problem. And then, of course, the minerality, the roots are taking the minerals from the soil, and then, of course, if you take minerals from the soil, grapes have minerals, the wine will have minerals. There are beautiful minerals. There are the blend between the minerals and the saltiness of the ocean, and the perfect ripeness of the grapes. It's like a perfect mix that produce a Tannat with those characteristics. It's fresh in the mouth. It has the acidity. It has beautiful flavors, beautiful aromas. So it's a different style of Tannat. I remember when we start to produce Tannat in Garzón, a lot of people tell me, well, it doesn't look like Tannat. And I said, yes, it doesn't look like Tannat, but it is Tannat. It's a different style of Tannat. It's a new style. Absolutely. And that's what we are doing since 2009.
And it's
the color is...
It's very hard to show on an Instagram live, but it's because it's quite kind of, it's not necessarily as black as you often get Tannat. You've got such incredible kind of red, bright red color to this. Very intense though. and I think you've described it perfectly. I love the kind of complexity you have with this, but with finesse and with direction in the mouth. We're close to running out of time, so I think my last question is going to be about your. We could carry on, but otherwise the video won't save for us for playback. But I want to ask about your hobby, which is skydiving, I hear.
Yeah, you have good information. Yes, I started to skydive well a year and a half ago, and I really love it. And well, now I have 90 champs, so I take it seriously.
Excellent. And do you have a post skydive wine? Do you have a post skydive ritual?
So
do you
sorry?
have a post skydive wine to calm your nerves with afterwards? What do you like to drink after your skydiving?
Well, I always drink Cab Franc after a good skydiving session. Yeah, because it's fresh and it's not so strong. You can enjoy it, relax, and enjoy the moment. After a good jump, you feel with a lot of energy. I feel really good, and I really want to lay back and relax and drink some wine and think about the jump and how to perfeccionar. How do you say perfeccionar? Sorry?
Perfect it.
Perfect it, yeah. Because of course, every single sport needs to lot of opportunity. You do once and then you need to perfect, and then you do it again, and you have, it's the same as making wine. You have one single opportunity, so and you have 50 seconds, so it's one shot, one opportunity. So you it's the same as winemaking. You have just one shot, one year for the opportunity, and then you need to wait one more year. Skydiving is the same. You have one jump, then you need to take the plane again and jump again. It's not easy.
Well, I think you've done your 5 seconds shot very proud with these wines. They're incredible to taste, and I really recommend that if anyone wants to get hold of them in the UK, they're at the Fine Wine Company and Vinvum, VINVM, and there's more details on our website on South American Wine Guide, where you can see all about Garzon, and also you can visit their website, Bodega Garzón, and they need to come to Uruguay. Basically, my last recommendation is, as soon as the borders open, get there, because this is an incredible winery to visit, an amazing place to sit back and have lunch and soak up the view. So thank you so much.
We can talk hours about Garzón, but if you don't go to Garzón, you don't understand what we are talking about.
Absolutely. You have to get there in the vineyard and taste the wines right there, with incredible food of your restaurant and of Uruguay too. Thank you so much, German. That's been an absolute pleasure, and I've really enjoyed trying these wines with you. Thank you for sharing all your information about Granite, Maldonado, and enthusing us to all jump out of a plane sometime soon.
It was a pleasure for me. I hope you enjoy and the wines, of course, and hope you see you soon again. I saw you in London, I remember. So I want to see you here in Garzón and try some wines.
I will. Cheers, German. Merry Christmas.
Cheers. Thank you so much. Bye.